security. I think a lot of even journalists may not realize what we mean when we say sanctuary city. It's a term that can have a lot of meanings. It can mean free welfare for illegal immigrants, and often does, and free benefits for illegals, and often does. But the core definition is used by ICE of a sanctuary city is a city where when an illegal alien is charged or convicted of a crime, they are not turned over to ICE for removal. So just as a simple comparison, if in, say, the state of Texas, 10 illegal aliens are arrested for committing a crime and they're about to be released, ICE will issue a detainer and they'll be transferred from the state or local custody to ICE, and then ICE will then put them in detention and deport them. In California, they will not be handed over to ICE. They'll be released at time and place unknown, and then ICE will have to go searching for weeks, months to find them, and in many cases those aliens will go on to commit additional serious offenses, including oftentimes, as we've seen over and over again, rape and murder. And so that is the reason why it's so essential to prioritize enforcement in sanctuary cities.
Can you comment on the Federal Register published restrictions on terms for visas for students and journalists, foreign journalists? Can you comment on the rationale for those term limits, 4 years, and then like journalists 240 days?
No, I think it's just a programmatic integrity measure to make sure that while you're in that status, you should be in fact at a school learning and educating. We found a lot of cases where someone applied for a student visa, they got it, and then 11 years later, they're still in that same status. At that point in time, obviously, your education would clearly be over. So just making sure, it's a way to cut down on fraud, to make sure that foreign students are actually being educated at schools and are not just staying on that status without actually being enrolled students.
And journalists, like they limiting them to 240
days?
It's
just a program integrity measure, that's all.
On a summit last Monday, South Korea, United States summit, is there any joint statement upon by both countries? If not, why?
I don't have any news to make on that except to say that the president has been very clear about his expectations for South Korea in terms of what an investment deal, in terms of what a fair and balanced trade deal looks like. And our Secretary of Commerce is working on that as we speak, as of course is the rest of the President's trade team, and as soon as we have an update, we'll share it with you.
Mr. Miller, would
yes.
the U.S. tariff Norway after its sovereign wealth fund said it wouldn't invest in Caterpillar for selling to Israel? Do you have any insight into that?
No insight right now, sorry.
And then separately, the Lisa Cook court hearing ended with no decision. Have you spoken with the president about that hearing today?
I don't have any update on that except to say that the president's authority as the head of the executive branch to terminate executive branch employees is a plenary authority that is fundamental to our constitutional order. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. On Kilmar over in Garcia, could you just speak a little bit about the administration's decision to keep him in ICE detention, taking up a bed when he's already on the U.S. Marshals Monitoring Service because of the criminal trial, and also if you could speak to the decision or the plan to deport him to Uganda. The judge in the immigration case, I should say, raised concerns about coercion with that in a hearing earlier this week.
Why would it be coercion to send somebody to Uganda?
They said it was possible coercion. They didn't make.
No. I'm just yes. It was a rhetorical question, which I'll address. But so first of all, this is the issue with crazy liberal judges everywhere: is people who are a clear flight risk, a clear threat to public safety, get released over and over and over again. We see that here in Washington D.C., not in the immigration context, but you see individuals all the time who are charged with extremely serious crimes. They are released on their own recognizance, and they go on to commit robbery, muggings, carjackings, murder. I mean, I've seen example after example of extremely serious felony, including homicides, where the individual would have been in jail but for the fact that they were released by a judge. Obviously, the U.S. government, with someone who is an extreme flight and public safety risk, like Garcia, we are not going to allow them to be on the street where they can engage. I mean, this is someone, as you know, who's not only a member of a terrorist organization, who's not only been accused of battery, but who's been accused of grave crimes against children. This is not someone we're going to allow to be out on the street. Now, so the point about Uganda, you just have to marvel at this. The same left-wing NGOs who tell us that we should open our borders to all the poor countries of the world also tell us that it would be unfair, improper to have anybody live in those countries. Well, if those countries don't have good systems of law and good systems of governance, then why would we want to have open migration from those countries? So these two propositions are in complete conflict. But more fundamentally, remember, Garcia has said he doesn't want to go back home to El Salvador. That's what he said. So we're honoring that request by providing him with an alternate place to live. We're not a travel booking agency. It's not our job to say to illegal alien terrorists, pick your favorite destination in the world and we'll send you a charter jet there. We have countries that have very graciously agreed to help resettle nationals from other countries, which is a great benefit to the United States. And obviously that's something that Garcia is eligible for.
Stephen, the French president has said today that if Putin doesn't have talks with Zelensky, then President Trump will have been, quote, played. Is that true? Is President Trump being played by President Putin at the moment?
Such an absurd question. President Trump has achieved 7 peace deals in 7 months. No president in history has done more to advance the cause of peace. He's been nominated by multiple world leaders for the Nobel Peace Prize. Literally no president, not just in our lifetimes, but that I can think of in American history, and no world leader anywhere today, anywhere on earth, has done more to advance world peace than President Trump. He's ended the conflict between Israel and Iran. He's ended the conflict between Rwanda and Congo, between India and Pakistan, Azerbaijan. I mean, example after example after example. And obviously he's working steadfastly to end the killing in Ukraine. And keep in mind, this is President Biden's war. It started because of President Biden, and President Trump inherited President Biden's war, and he's working steadfastly to end the killing, and that's something that everyone in the world should celebrate. Yes.
Stephen, as President Trump,
behind the decision not to allow members of the PLO and the PA to come for the United Nations, given that it's always been the norm that people who are part of official delegations get the right to come to the UN.
Well, I would let the Secretary of State comment more on it, but I mean, very straightforwardly, we've been very clear when it comes to our visa system that we are going to take all necessary steps to prevent our visa system from being used by individuals who may support or espouse terrorism or terrorist activity. Yes, sir.
May I ask you about visa for foreign journalists?
Oh, sorry. I already answered that question.
Yes.
How confident is the White House that you can permanently nominate a CDC director that sort of balances the vaccine stance of Kennedy with someone that could pass the Senate?
Well, as we know, I mean, so we'll find an incredible nominee. I'm not worried about that at all. But it's a good opportunity to talk about the CDC issue more broadly. As we know, the CDC's credibility was shattered during the COVID era. This is now widely understood and widely acknowledged. And CDC used to be, of course, or seen widely around the world as a premier health agency. And much of the world discovered in the last few years that CDC was actually staffed by a lot of very partisan and very political bureaucrats who weren't at all concerned about public health and weren't actually very knowledgeable about public health. And we are working hard. And more importantly, Secretary Kennedy, one of the world's foremost voices, advocates, and experts on public health, is working hard to restore the credibility and the integrity of CDC as a scientific organization committed to the scientific method and getting to the root causes of the public health epidemic in this country. You know, there's one chronic illness after another where we have seen incidences and rates in the Western world in general, in America in particular, skyrocket over recent decades and years, both childhood illnesses and adult illnesses. And we know that the drivers of these chronic illnesses are things that can be explained both through environmental factors, both through pharmacological factors, as well as other things that impact public health and well-being. But there has been no serious effort until Secretary Kennedy came along to deal with these systemic root drivers of chronic health. And it's an honor to be able to work with Secretary Kennedy as he tackles these issues on behalf of President Trump.
Does the president have any hesitancies about any of Secretary Kennedy's actions or leadership?
Secretary Kennedy has been a crown jewel of this administration, who's working tirelessly to improve public health for all Americans, and again, to deal with the drivers of the chronic health crisis in this country.
Will you CDC director be more aligned with President, with Kennedy in terms of
sorry, over here, yes.
Thank you. At what point do you expect the crime operation in D.C. to end, taking into account that 30-day limit on federalization of police force?
So, it's a great question. So, first of all, we appreciate the comments from the mayor acknowledging how profound a difference President Trump's leadership has made in reducing crime and violence in the city. And I can say on a personal level, as somebody who has lived in this area for 2 decades, the transformation has been breathtaking. And we hear every day from members of the community, but particularly from longtime members of the community, and native Washingtonians, been here for many years, some cases whose families have been here for many years, that they're just overflowing with gratitude at how safe and clean the city has become, and how the parks are open again, and the sidewalks are clean again, and they're not worried about getting shot or mugged or carjacked. The president has the authority, under both that statute as well as inherent Article 2 authorities, to maintain control of the federal and local policing in the city for as long as he may desire. But at a more fundamental level, the key point is that this is the capital city of the United States, and the president is going to do whatever is necessary in order to ensure that the capital is the safest big city in the country. And of course, we want all cities to be the safest that they could possibly be. But here right now in the nation's capital, this is a historic effort to transform our nation's capital into something that is the envy of the world in terms of beauty, in terms of safety, in terms of community. And it really is a wonderful thing to watch that happening, but there are a lot of deep systemic challenges we have to overcome. There are scores of organized street crews in this city that are comprised of career criminals that are engaged in narcotics trafficking and weapons trafficking and organized gang violence that represent a severe, acute public safety threat to this city. And we have DEA, FBI, ATF, and every federal law enforcement agency working to root out the chronic gang violence in this community and liberate this city for the people who live here. And it really is, it's an extraordinary thing that is happening right now. Nowhere in the history of our country has such a dramatic improvement been made in such a short time, but this is just beginning. And so, I guess just to restate what I was saying to you, and I'm spending more time on this because it's so important. The president's authorities under the Home Rule Act, under the Constitution, are clear in terms of his ability to direct and control public safety in the city. But even more important than the questions about specific legal authorities is the fact that as President of the United States, he will not relent, and he will use every authority and tool at his disposal to ensure that the capital city of the United States is safe for all Americans. And we will never waver, and he will never waver from fulfilling that mission. And again, the gratitude and the appreciation that we've seen from the residents of this community has been really one of the more amazing things I've seen in my time here serving in the White House. But again, this is just the very beginning.
Have you talked about the Insurrection Act?
Just time for time for 2 more questions. Yes.
How do we interpret this U.S. naval buildup around Venezuela? Is it drug cartels? Is it putting pressure on Maduro, or both, or what?
I'm going to be very clear. The president has said actually going back to the campaign, and then from day one of this presidency and the early executive orders, criminal cartels in this hemisphere are foreign terrorist organizations that present a clear and present danger to the American people. There are no organizations on this planet that are responsible for more dead Americans than the criminal cartels, the narco traffickers that are operating in the Western Hemisphere. And so the president has been clear in saying that the mission of the United States military includes the defense of the nation against these foreign terrorist organizations and criminal cartels. And so what you are seeing is the resolve of the president and the United States military to combat and dismantle drug trafficking organizations, criminal cartels, and these foreign terrorist organizations in our hemisphere.
Chicago.
On Russia, even the president has said or raised concerns concerns that Putin may be tapping him along. How is that not a concern now, considering that things just seem to be stalled a bit? I mean, seems to be no progress between Putin and Zelensky meeting. Is there any concern of being tapped?
I don't think I have anything to add to what I said already on the subject, which is that President Trump, since he came into this office, has made it his highest priority in the national security space to deliver peace, security, and stability in the world. He's ended 7 wars in 7 months. He's been very clear in his public statements about his priority in ending the killing in Ukraine. We're not a combatant to this war, or in this war, we're not a party to this war. This is a humanitarian concern about the mass death that's taking place, as well as, of course, the ever-present risks of escalation and spiraling. And I think, like all Americans, I'm endlessly grateful that we have a president who is so committed to stopping violence, stopping killing, and making the world a safe place for the future. And that's something that fills me with pride every single day. Time for one last question.
What are your plans for Chicago? What are your plans for Chicago from this administration? And have you had a direct conversation with the president about invoking the Insurrection Act for Chicago or any American city?
Well, it's a great question. No updates on Chicago. So as soon as I have some, I'll be glad to give them to you. The president's been clear in his public statements on that, but I will just take the privilege of the question as an opportunity to reiterate once again, this administration is committed to the eradication of organized street violence in the United States of America as one of our top public safety objectives. There is no place for organized street violence in America, whether it be from homegrown crews of street thugs or whether it be from foreign criminal cartels operating on our soil. Every American city should be safe and free from this organized, horrific, bloody street violence that we have tolerated for too long. The Democrat Party as an institution at every level, its judges, its lawyers, its community activists, and its politicians, exist to serve these criminal thugs. We see it here in D.C. We talk to the cops. They say, we're not allowed to arrest anybody, and then when we do arrest somebody, then they're immediately bailed out, they're immediately released, they're immediately set free, we arrest them again, they're back on the street again, and what do? They kill, they attack, they rob, they rape. Why would we put up with this? Right? These are society destroyers. This is a simple choice. You either side with civilization or you side with anarchy and violence. And so President Trump is proud to be using federal law enforcement and our National Guard to make this city safe and peaceful for Americans, and he stands ready to help and assist any community that wishes to be liberated from these criminal elements that are such a dire threat to the freedom and tranquility of the American people. Thank you.
White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller fielded questions from reporters, addressing a wide range of policy issues from immigration to foreign affairs. Miller began by clarifying what the administration means when it uses the term sanctuary city. He explained that while some think it refers to free benefits or welfare for those in the country illegally, the core definition used by ICE is far more specific. A sanctuary city is one that refuses to hand over people charged or convicted of crimes to federal immigration authorities. He contrasted states like Texas, where ICE detainers are honored, with states like California, where such individuals are released back into communities, forcing ICE to track them down later. Miller argued that this practice often leads to repeat crimes, including violent offenses. Reporters pressed him on recently published restrictions setting term limits for student and journalist visas. He defended the move as a program integrity measure designed to prevent abuse of the system, noting that some individuals have remained on student visas for over a decade without actually attending school. By placing limits, 4 years for students, 240 days for foreign journalists, the administration aims to ensure the visas are used as intended. Turning to foreign relations, Miller commented on ongoing trade talks with South Korea, saying the president has been clear about expectations for fair investment and balanced trade. He did not provide new announcements but stressed that negotiations are active under the Commerce Department and the president's trade team. On a question about Norway's sovereign wealth fund refusing to invest in Caterpillar due to sales to Israel, he said he had no information to share. Miller also addressed the case of Killer Garcia, a man held in ICE detention while facing serious criminal accusations. He dismissed concerns raised by a judge about coercion in deportation proceedings to Uganda, arguing that individuals posing extreme flight and safety risks should not be released. He criticized judges who release offenders only for them to re-offend, citing cases of robbery, carjacking, and even homicide. On Uganda, he said critics contradict themselves by arguing both for open borders from poor countries and against sending people back to them. When asked whether President Trump was being played by Russian President Vladimir Putin, Miller strongly rejected the notion, claiming Trump had brokered 7 peace deals in 7 months and accomplished more for peace than any president in history. He insisted the war in Ukraine was President Biden's responsibility, describing Trump as working tirelessly to end the conflict. On restrictions for members of the Palestinian Liberation Organization and Palestinian authorities seeking entry for United Nations events, Miller said the administration will block visas for individuals tied to terrorism or groups that espouse violence. He was also asked about leadership at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Miller said the CDC's credibility had collapsed during the COVID era due to partisan and political influence. He credited Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. with spearheading efforts to restore trust and focus the agency on science, while tackling root causes of chronic illnesses linked to environmental and pharmaceutical factors. Miller then turned to domestic security, particularly crime in Washington, D.C. He described a breathtaking transformation under Trump, claiming crime and violence had been dramatically reduced thanks to federal involvement. He said residents were grateful to see parks reopened, sidewalks cleaned, and crime falling. He emphasized that the president has constitutional authority to maintain policing in the Capitol for as long as necessary and will continue to ensure that the city is safe. Finally, he underscored Trump's broader stance on public safety, warning against the threat of organized street violence and drug cartels. He described cartels as foreign terrorist organizations responsible for thousands of American deaths and said the president had directed the U.S. military to dismantle them. Miller closed by reaffirming Trump's commitment to making American cities secure, declaring it a choice between civilization or anarchy.